Today we're talking to Nick Larson, and he has got a very, very unique story about something that happened to him on Mount Hood, where a rescue had to take place to essentially save his life. So I know Nick, and I had heard his story on a podcast before, and I was quite blown away by it. So I wanted him to share it with you guys to make sure that someone else doesn't end up in the same position. That's kind of the theme with some of these episodes here. And I cut out the intro because my audio just was terrible on this. I mean, it sounds like I am underwater in a wooden box. I don't know what else to tell you. So I spared you from the intro, and thankfully most of the episode is Nick recounting his story. So we're keeping the episode. It's an awesome story. He's a very good storyteller. But please just excuse my audio, and you can throw tomatoes at me on social media or something like that. But don't give a 1-star rating because of it. It's just one episode. So we're getting better, and we'll be consistently better. So let's get to the episode.
All right. Well, let's make the transition to old Mount Hood. Oh, why East, huh? Oh, why East? And one of the reasons I contacted Nick was because, one, he told me about his story once, and then he was on another podcast, and I listened to it, and I was like, wow, okay, that was crazy. And then also because I had my experience on Mount Hood a couple weeks ago, and so I really wanted to get another person on here to talk about their story, what they learned, and again, to have people learn from it so it doesn't have to happen to them. So I think that's a really good point of this whole podcast and some of these episodes, just to help out other people. So where do you want to begin on that, man? Like,
well, I think an important point, to talk about, and what I kind of mentioned to you is if one person takes away something from this conversation, if one person adds one thing to their pack, or they're a little more hyper aware, hyper focused of the safety aspect of this climb, then it was all worth it. That's coming full circle. And, for a long time afterwards, I couldn't talk about it. I had a hard time talking about it, and I had a hard time relating to people because they hadn't been through an experience like that. And I remember, just after that, being at work, and I was drawing blood at the time, doing some mobile phlebotomy work, and someone just asking me, mundane, simple questions, and I just had a hard time. I was having a lot of anxiety, and I had a hard time just relating and just being relatable to people. So I was just in a weird place after this incident.
Yeah, it was a very, very unique incident for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How much did you know about Mount Hood before going on that day? Had you climbed it before? Was that your first climb? Have you been in the area? I know you used to snowboard up there when you were younger.
Yeah, so I grew up going to High Cascade Snowboard Camp as a kid, as a teenager, and that changed my life. The only thing I ever wanted to do after high school was move to Oregon and be able to snowboard year round, and I was climbing all the other mountains. When I moved out here, I was going through a breakup, and the way that I was coping was just doing solo mountaineering, kind of figuring out as I go. And I'll be honest, I was naive. I had the proper safety equipment, and I was kind of reading things here and there, and I was reading stuff online, but the only way to get experience is to do it, right? And to fail, right? And to be humbled and to listen when you do fail, so it doesn't happen again, right? And this was definitely a big wake-up call for me.
Yeah, because there's a very fine line with that and especially something like mountaineering, right? Because that first F-up could be game over.
Yeah, you only get one chance. Yeah. And a lot of people don't get another chance. And so I think that's so important to talk about it and to get that knowledge out there.
Exactly. So can you describe what led up to this situation on Hood?
Yeah.
How'd you end up there? What was the day like?
We're coming up on the 3-year anniversary in May of this climb, actually. It was Memorial Day weekend. We had just gotten like 12 inches of fresh. It was a bluebird day. My original plan was just to go up to the Palmer lift and then just ride down. And I was staying with a friend in rhododendron area. And I had told this person, it's like, hey, look, if I'm not back by 4:00, something's up. If you can't get a hold of me, you need to initiate something. Okay. Maybe I just had some second sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I was climbing up. It was an awesome day. I mean, it was bluebird. I mean, there were some inversion clouds, towards the bottom, but not kind of knowing and reading the weather the way I was kind of supposed to be reading it. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think anything of the headwind coming up at me. I didn't foresee the change in wind patterns at all. It was all just a beautiful day. And as I was climbing up, I was feeling so good. I could not get the smile off my face. It was frozen in my face. And I was on these little drift approach skis. So, but they are like a little company out of Utah, 2.4 pounds. They have skins on the base of them, and you have your board on your back, and you can climb up the skin track. They have risers. I mean, pretty much the same type of deal as a split board. Really, really like those if you have a quiver of boards. Anyway, so I was climbing up. Everything was feeling good. It's like, man, get to the Palmer lift. I'm going to keep going. I've seen my buddies climb up here, a bunch of park rats climb up here, in hoodies and whatever. And they're, granted that's in the summertime and things are a little less intense up there. But so I'm climbing up, and I have all the proper tools. I have my ice axe, I have whippets, shovels, everything like that. And going up through the pearly gates. And at this point, I'm climbing. Like it's pretty vertical. I'm climbing up this point. And that bluebird day drastically changed. I mean, honestly, within the matter of minutes, it changed from blue skies to just the darkest, cloudiest. I mean, being inside of a ping pong ball. I mean, I couldn't tell up from down, down from up. And so I kind of waited it out. I'm like, well, I guess I'm not going to make the true summit. I mean, I was so damn close to the summit. I just had to start punching holes down climbing, and just get to a point where I could just kind of get my senses back together. And just all I needed was a 30-second window just to see the direction where I was going. Because being up there in the clear, there's fumaroles everywhere. I mean, there's crevasses. There's all kinds of stuff that you could fall through. And not having, I mean, I couldn't see, my hand in front of my face. I mean, that was pretty much it. So I was screaming at the mountain, and I guess I should backtrack a little bit too. My father had passed away about 2 years prior to this climb, about 6 years now or so. And I had spread his ashes on Mount Hood. So I had this sense of security, maybe false sense of security, that nothing was going to happen to me, and it was the last family trip we had all went on was to Mount Hood. He was there. And I was screaming to him. It was like, help me here. Like, I need help. Like, I'm not trying to freak out, but it's getting to that point. And so time has keep going on. I want to say maybe 30 minutes has gone by, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And now it's dumping, and it's windy. It's all the things. It's rhyming. It was just insane. And so I strap on, and I start side slipping down, and I'm kind of making my way, but then I'll stop, but then I couldn't tell if I was stopped. So then I would just start tomahawking, tumbling, because the vertigo was so insane. And I remembered I was dry heaving just because I was so sick from not knowing if I was moving or not. So I get back up.
What part of the mountain were you on at this point? Where you were even at?
So, went up halfway up the pearly gates.
Yeah.
Or 3/4 up the pearly gates. I went down more towards the lunch table. Was like the saddle?
Probably.
I think that's saddle. Yeah, Hog's Back. Yep, that's what I meant. Yep.
Yep.
I think, yeah, it was just above the hogs back there. And
yeah,
I mean,
you had two. For people that have never been on Hood, you should probably look up a picture. And if this is on video, or if I do this as a reel, I'm gonna superimpose a picture onto this. But
yeah,
right there at the hog's back, you have three killers. You have the Bergschrund, which is a giant crevasse, and then on either side you have two fumaroles you can fall into. So if you slip on either side of those, you are going to be inside one of those. So basically what he's saying is he's strolling around blind right now with a crevasse and two fumaroles somewhere in the vicinity, almost like they're landmines at this point.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, and I was using my trekking pole as like a blind man's stick. I mean, I was just trying to hold it, and it just makes me nauseous thinking about it. You know, that anticipation that you're about to fall, like you're on a roller coaster and it's about to drop, or the big drop at Six Flags. You're just expecting a fall. You know, I'm like, I'm gonna fall off a cliff. I can't tell. But next thing I know, I'm side slipping, and all of a sudden I feel the snow around me start to move. And things kind of go black at this point, where I start tomahawking, and I whacked my head. I was wearing a helmet, but I lost my whippet. I lost my ice axe. I mean, I don't know how far I fell, but I fell enough where I was completely disoriented, even more so. And I lost some of my gear, my safety gear. And I was running low on water. I was damn near out of water, and I had some protein bars and things left, because again, this is just supposed to be a jog off the Palmer. This is not supposed to be some expedition to the summit. And that's, mistake number one, is changing the plans, from the intended goal. So little I know that the fall line's taking me to the north side of the mountain, and I'm just kind of keep going. I thought I was going straight, but again, being so disoriented, it kept taking me to the north side of the mountain, and I can't remember the spot where I ended up now.
Were they saying it was like Mississippi Head or something like that?
Oh yeah, okay. It was below Mississippi Head or something. I think that's what they said, and it was termed as the Hood Triangle, where a lot of people get lost in this area because of that fall line pushing everyone that way. And my phone battery was running real low. I had Strava running, of course. That was gotta get those Strava points, man. Or it didn't happen. But that was killing my phone battery. And so then I'm to the point now where I'm making my way over these ridge lines, and it's heavy, thick snow. It's sleeting. It's going in waves of blizzards. It's raining. It's doing everything. And I get over the next ridge. I'm like, okay, timberline's got to be over the next one or the next one. I'm looking for any sort of landmark that I recognize. And again, I've been coming up here for years, and I don't recognize anything. And now it's getting to the point, and it's like, okay, now it's 4 o'clock now. It's like, okay, I'm supposed to be where I'm supposed to be at the lodge, and I'm not. And now I feel like I'm getting even more and more lost, and I'm starting to eat the snow, which I know I'm not supposed to do. I've been a firefighter, EMT. I've been on the other side of rescues for a good majority of my adult life. So I kind of know the do's and don'ts. But then when you're in that panic mode, things are very different. I'm still trying to keep a cool head, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of here. And so I look at my phone, and I had one bar with 2% left on my phone. It's like, if I don't call now, then this might be my last opportunity.
One bar with 2% left on his phone.
Yeah. So I make it out. I call 911, and at this point, I think it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock now. And I get in touch with 911 dispatch, and I say what the situation is. I'm lost on Mount Hood. After attempting a solo summit, I got caught in this inversion. But the call is really quick, because I'm like, look, I have this much left on my phone. I just need details. Like, I'm lost and I need help. Can you ping my location type of deal? And at that point, my friend had already initiated a rescue operation around that 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock time frame. And so things were already starting to move. And being from the Midwest at the time, I was kind of naive, thinking that, okay, they're just going to bring a couple snowmobiles over from Timberline. It's not going to be a big deal to come grab me. This will be a story to tell at the bar, whatever. But I was like, well, I guess I got to hunker down. And I found this boulder, and behind this boulder was this like little kind of little cave type of deal. And I had used my Abby shovel to dig a hole in it to kind of seek some shelter. I had put my snowboard out as kind of to show rescue, like, hey, I need help. I kind of put it in this very intentional position that they could see it, and some other things that they could notice. So I started digging down. I went to go grab some sticks to attempt to start a fire, but everything was encased in rime. And I have tools for fire starting, but I just had some lighters and stuff and some wrappers and things that were just not igniting. And I remember, and this was the biggest actual PTSD that I had from this, where I tried to start a fire for hours. I mean, hours, to the point where I was screaming. I would go through points of literal insanity. I'm like, I don't know why this is not lighting, but everything was just encased in ice, and my thumb was raw from this attempt. And at that point, I was like, I can't. All bets are off. I really thought that was, if I don't get this fire started, I'm going to die. And I couldn't get it started. And I was cold. I was wet. I mean, I was cold to the core. And I guess one thing I forgot to mention is that my dog was in the car, in my truck at the time. He comes everywhere with me. It was too deep for him to climb up hood, and thank God. He probably would have. I definitely would have summited if he was there with me. But I was sobbing thinking about my dog in the truck. I mean, dogs have that intuition, knowing, when their person is in trouble or whatever, vice versa. I'm like, I don't know what's happening with him, and I left food and water for him, so I knew he was okay in that aspect. But I was sobbing thinking about him, and I was envisioning holding him for warmth. Like, I was really went to that mental state of mind, just holding nothing but holding my dog. And next thing I know, I guess I just passed out. I remember shivering and seeing the sun go down, and that's when things got real. I had to turn my phone off. Obviously, prior to this whole dig, I turned it back on just that one last percent, because I thought that was it. I had texted my mom, saying, that I loved her, and she got a phone call from the rescue operation saying that her son was in trouble, and I knew that she was panicked, and I just wanted her to know that. And that's the last thing I remember. Just shivering to death. It was very peaceful, I'd say. When I came to, the rescuers had got there. It was about 4 a.m. or so, and I wasn't in that hole anymore. And this is from their perspective. I was 100 feet from the hole, and I had taken off half my clothing. And I was talking to somebody. They said that I was just rambling, yelling, shouting, saying crazy stuff to somebody. And it was very eerie. I mean, I think about my father. I mean, I like to think that I was talking to him, that he was keeping me there. But, when you start taking your clothes off, that's kind of one of the last things that you do before the bucket. So they got me right in time. And I remember this woman's voice, and it was the most soothing voice I've ever heard. And it was one of the rescuers, and she had given me some tea from her pack. And I remember that tea. I mean, I felt every drop of it go down into my throat, into my body. Because when you're that cold, like cold to the core, they couldn't even catch a pulse on me or anything like that. Like it was messed up. But I wasn't really coherent. I didn't know who I was, where I was, and this is all secondhand from what you listen to the podcast on Portland Mountain Rescue. I didn't know any of those things, and I thought it was Batchy Ski Patrol, actually, something like that, who was coming to get me. And after kind of hanging out there, they had a seek shelter. They got a second team in there to help bring me out because they thought I was ambulatory. They thought that I could snowshoe out, but I was pretty far gone. I think I had pissed and shit myself and all that. And they had carried me 14 miles to safety. I mean, these guys lost toenails. I mean, they carried me in a Stokes basket. You know, eventually, as I started coming to and realized how big of an operation this was, and involved multiple teams, multiple
No, we're not editing that. We're not editing that one out. We're keeping that one in.
Whatever.
Yes.
Municipalities. There we go. Okay. But
it's that dang Wisconsin school system. I tell you what, I can't pronounce it either. So.
But yeah, they had carried me to safety, and I was taken by ambulance to Mount Hood Medical, and a whole day had passed. I hadn't even realized that a full day had passed, and I remember flipping through the channels and then seeing my picture on the news. I'm like, wow, this was a way bigger deal than I thought it was. Like 24 hours had passed, more than 24 hours had passed at this point, and I was a missing person, on Mount Hood.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for those people. I mean, I owe them my life. To make a long story short, when rescue, or when the sheriff got into my vehicle, Nitro had jumped out of the vehicle, and he went straight to the climbers drill. He knew the exact last place where I was, and that dog would have found me. He would have been half dead, but he would have found me. I believe that. But little did I know that there was these folks in the parking lot who were camping there over the weekend, and they were feeding him treats through the window, and they were like, this guy left these windows open. It's nighttime now. Where is he going? So they actually looked after him once the sheriff got him out, and I'm still friends with these guys this day, Brad and Tina. And I was so fortunate that they took care of my best. I was so fortunate for that.
Yeah. Because as you were up there, you weren't only just thinking about yourself. You were also feeling guilty about your dog being in the parking lot and having to go through that and not knowing what's happening.
Right. And think about my mom too. And I had broke my neck, my C2 of all things, about 6 years prior to that. And I was begging the nurse not to call my mom at that point. And I remember I can only imagine what that call from the sheriff saying that your son is missing on Mount Hood, what that must have done to her at that hour of the night. And, Wisconsin is 2 hours back, or 3 hours back from us.
2 hours. 2 hours.
4, yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Yep. So it's super late, basically.
Super, super late. Yeah. And I can only imagine the worry that she had. So.
Yeah. Wow. That is one heck of a story.
Yeah. It made it a short one, but there's a lot of details that kind of get smoothed over as time goes on, and you're like, I don't really remember things how I used to. It's kind of weird how that happened.
Well, I gotta say, man, you are a heck of a storyteller. I loved the details that you put in there, giving the context of where you were at, the things on Mount Hood, what you were seeing, what was around you. Grade A. Yeah. You touched on the Mount Hood Triangle, which is something, that essentially number one, I want to touch on a couple things, is the weather. And dude, it was so interesting because a couple months ago I was on Hood and it was a bluebird day just like that. I had actually went up past Palmer and I kind of rode some of those canyons off to, it would be Skiers West coming down.
Yep.
Kind of next to White River. And I came back down and it was still the afternoon and I picked Haley up down lower on the mountain and I was like, hey, she's never seen Mount Hood. And I was like, hey, like it's a bluebird day. Like it's freaking amazing. Like you're going to see the mountain. We get up there about an hour later, completely whited out up there.
Yep.
Like it was never right. And so that experience happened to you when you were way up there. And that ping pong ball is such an accurate description because anytime anybody's ever, I was in it very briefly on Mount Adams and I could not figure out where I was. And it was, and it just comes in quick. But then usually sometimes it'll leave quick. And I'm sure that's what you were hoping. It's like, oh my God, I hope this leaves. But it didn't. And so, that's one of the things, if anybody's going up to Hood, one thing I remember reading was magnetic south is where you want to get to. Because otherwise, just like Nick was talking about, you end up in like Mississippi Head and all those cliffs. And now you're way down because a lot of people, I think they follow the fall line or something, right?
Yeah.
And then that takes them totally the wrong way. So if you're ever up there, it's magnetic south, I guess, is a good thing, good rule of thumb to follow. But dude, that's the thing about Hood is you feel like Timberline is right there. The other day when we summited, we got down to the parking lot and there was some people from there was a guy from like Iowa there. Yeah. And he's like, oh, what did you do? And I was like, oh yeah, we just climbed to the top and like rode down. And he's like, oh yeah, it doesn't even look that far away. Would it take you like 10 minutes to get down? Yeah. And I'm like, 10 minutes to get down, dude. I've been going for like 45, man. Like,
right. Yeah. A lot of vert.
It looks like it's right there. I think that's one of the things with Hood, but
like Shasta.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to know, how has this experience impacted your view of outdoor activities and just in general? Like, has it influenced things now going forward? And what did you take from it?
It is, at the time, I lost my job at the hospital. I was going through the breakup. And so I was in a bad, rough spot. So I was climbing these mountains to kind of find, lack of a better word, find myself, right? And you kind of find yourself in those darkest moments. I am so thankful for this experience because it has given me a hyper awareness of you're not in that the mountain commands respect. And but like I said, I was naive. I was like, I've done all these other mountains before. I can do this one. This is not a big deal. So many people do Mount Hood. How many people do South Sister? It's just a hop, skip it away, and it's so accessible. And that's the thing that's so dangerous about it, is that it is so accessible, but there's so many things that can go wrong. It has given me, what was I going to say? Shoot. Mine just kind of goes blank sometimes. You get so excited that it just kind of like goes away. But it has given me experience, and it's given me the experience to tell other people about it. And like I said, if one person learns from this, then it was all worth it, And I love Mount Hood. There's always been a calling, a drawing to it. It's part of that energy vortex with Shasta and Crater Lake and Mount Thielsen and those types of mountains. There's just something so special about it. And I have even more of an intimate relationship with it now. And to make the story complete, 1 year, well, close to a year, in April the following year, I got to climb it with the people who saved my life.
Oh, nice.
It was one of the most beautiful. I had tears in my eyes almost the entire way up. And to make this even more of a serendipitous story is that we were on the Hog's Back. We had stopped. They were doing some tests on that fume roll there. or that Brooks run, and kind of just testing the sulfur levels and things like that. And all of a sudden I hear a familiar voice, and it was Brad. It was Brad, the guy from the parking lot who had saved Nitro's life, or had looked after him that night. And of all the places that he could be, he was on Mount Hood the same day at the same time as my redemption. I mean, I have goosebumps.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how amazing that felt. I mean, I burst into tears. And when we all climbed up and we made it to that summit, it was the most visceral scream I've ever. Oh, I could tear up about it. It was really amazing, and that's really the stars aligning, you know. So.
So it really did come full circle, is what you're saying.
It really
like,
did.
Literally,
yeah.
like serendipitously came full circle. Not only were you climbing with people that saved you, but also the person that saved your dog was coming down or going up at the same time, whichever way
at the same time. And Mount, it's a big place, and there's a lot of activities you could be doing, and it was not planned whatsoever. And to link up like that was the coolest thing. Oh, man.
Well,
yeah.
Dude, that's why I had you on the podcast. You're a great storyteller with this stuff, and the way that you can take something that could be so negative like that, or could be so negative like that for somebody. But I mean, I guarantee there's plenty of people that have gone through a similar experience, maybe, and they just have never returned back to the mountains, right? And you've now.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interject there, but I remember what I was going to say. That I was having some survivor's guilt afterwards. That why did I survive in maybe lesser circumstances than somebody else who did it? And it's just like, why? I mean, truly, if they were came an hour later, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I mean, truly, it was that close. And I was just, and if someone from the rescue team would have gotten hurt saving me, I don't know if I could live with myself with that. Like, I would have really, but that's why they call it an accident. And I remember reading the online news stories and everything, and reading the comments section, and people just being awful. Armchair warriors saying, this idiot, what the hell is he doing? It's during COVID time too. So like there was that aspect of the whole thing. Like, you shouldn't be doing anything, and so that really got me down. And anyway, I didn't mean to cut you there.
Bro, I've experienced the same thing with what happened to me the other day I
want to hear your story.
Well, I just, and I told that to my fiance when I got back. Basically, what happened was I was getting hit by some ice. I let go of both my ice axes, started literally just sliding down Old Chute towards that fumarole, and somehow I self-arrested with my crampons.
Yeah.
Like 25 feet after falling 25 feet. And, if the conditions weren't good, and if the snow wasn't soft, and if I didn't think to do that, like, I would have been in this fumarole pit. I mean, and so that was the thing, man. Yeah. And like, that was the thing. And I was like, why did you talk about, there's been other people in similar positions don't make it out alive. I think, for every death that occurs for something like that, there's probably like 10 close calls that you don't hear about, right?
Yeah.
Like, you hear about the 4 deaths a year on Hood, but you don't hear about the 50 close calls that happen. And so you only go based on the death count.
Yeah. And some people are too proud to talk about it too.
Exactly. And that was one of the things I had in my notes, is like, I know that this is like super hard to relive, would be super hard for people. Like, it was hard for me to talk about, like, on this adventure, and I freaking let go of both my ice axes. But when I talked to my buddy, who's also named as Nick, because I just know so many.
Yeah.
This is Nick. I love it. But he said, I think it happened to you for a reason, because you can now inspire you have a large audience, you can inspire that audience, and now you're going to save a lot more lives. And I was like, dang, like I didn't really think about that, right? And so that's why I definitely wanted to get you on and share your story, which is way more serious than mine. And again, have people learn from it and have even more positive kind of vibes come from that. Because, and I think that maybe I'm wrong, but it's helped me with my survivor's guilt a little bit anyway.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and I think the dialogue needs to be, I come from the fire service, and I was in an organization for a while where you were made to feel stupid if you were to ask questions. And I remember being a 19-year-old firefighter, just went through school, went through EMT, went through firefighter 1, all those things, and like things are still so new, and things that were simple to other people were not always coming as easy, and you were made to feel so stupid. So then I stopped asking questions, and then I realized, I'm like, you could die. You can die by just not realizing something maybe so minuscule, and that dialogue just needs to change. And it's okay to be humbled. We're all human, dude, and we all make mistakes, and that's why they call it accidents. It even happens to the best. I mean, how many professional mountaineers, have passed? And so it's important to talk about.
Yeah, it is. And yes, and again, that's why I love having you on this podcast. You're a super humble dude, being willing to talk about this stuff. And going back to the question thing, dude, I just experienced this today. Like I'm working with a dude on this, like one of his businesses. I'm helping him out. And it's like, I am starting to become responsible for some of these things. And I feel so stupid asking all these questions, but I don't want to screw something up.
You want to screw it up. Yeah.
And it's like, okay. And I literally had this self-talk in my head. I was like, okay, I cannot, maybe I just don't ask the question and then I do it anyway. But then what if I screw it up? And so I'm just going back and forth, and it doesn't make it fun, right? Like I'm sure like when you were going through your firefighter, EMT, that type of stuff, it's just like the whole time you're like on edge.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I remember not ever being able to sleep because I'm just have so much anxiety. I got shingles at 18, man, because I was so stressed out.
Yeah, so, don't get shingles, people. Just ask the questions, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, so I guess my final question for you would be, what do you want people overall to take away from your experience? Like one or two things maybe that they could take with them on their next adventure, their next journey, something like that. Actually, and one before, actually, I want to hear what you say first, because I have an addition to one that I think might be, if you don't cover it, but I think you probably will.
Sure. One big thing, I don't care if you're going for a 6-mile hike, a 4-mile hike, a little jaunt through the woods, and it's not a big deal. We live in the high desert, or at least I live in the high desert in Bend, where, an 80-degree day in the summertime can turn into a 40-degree night. Always assume that you're going to be spending the night, even if it's a normal hike. I was telling this to my mountain bike kids that I coach, like, you could be the 12-year-old kid that saves your dad or your family, who breaks a femur and can't get out, and you could be at Phil's Trail. It could be something very, very simple like that. Having, your 5 essentials. Is it 6 essentials? 5 essentials. But having a fire starting kit, like I always have fire starting kit. And even if you cut up old bike tubes, those are great accelerants that you could have for a fire. And even having those trick candles with you, because think about a trick candle. I mean, you blow it and then it comes back. It keeps coming, and when it's real windy like that, it's real good to have. So I've added a couple of those things to my pack. Always have more water than you need, more food. Yeah, you add a bunch of extra weight, but that weight could save your life. And if not yours, somebody else's, because you can come up on someone else. It happened down South Sister, where I was coming down and someone had hit a tree that had broke their finger, and so you're using stuff from your pack and fixing their snowboard, doing things like that. So you never know who else you're going to come across.
That's a really good point. Yeah. So maybe the extra stuff isn't even for you that you maybe necessarily need it. Maybe you can help save somebody else's life. I love that. Love that. Yeah. And, something that you said too was earlier in the conversation was you switched the plan.
Yeah.
Like you had packed your kit for Palmer, which if anybody is familiar with this area, Palmer there's a lot of people around. There's
inbound
a lift right there. There's groomers if you want to ride down it. Like it's like a 2,000-foot split board up, and then you go down and you're back to your car. Super
well marked,
chill day. Yeah, well marked. Like you're not. I mean, you definitely could still get whited out up there.
Totally.
But for the most part, like you're not going to fall into a crevasse or a cliff or anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I think it was super important what you said, which was you were prepared for one thing, and then you went up and you did something like you pushed it further, right? And you just didn't have the kit for it.
Yeah.
Really.
Right. Yeah. Or just the foresight to kind of realize what I was doing either,
Yeah. I love it. Well, I just did an episode on the 10 Essentials with a mountain guide. Boy, he blew my mind, actually. Yeah. He blew my mind with some of the stuff that he's carrying. He actually have them right. Check this out. I just ordered these right now. So basically what they are like little roll-up glasses in case you forget your glasses. Like say you're on a glacier climb or something like that.
Or they fly off or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're like these little lightweight little things that just wrap around your face, basically. That would like totally suck to use, but it's like way better than snow blindness.
Yeah.
So I ordered those and
which happens a lot on Hood.
Yeah. And talking about the fire starters, right? Like I had that experience on the CT where I was getting hypothermic and I can't even, people don't understand like how your fingers do not work when you're cold. Yeah. Like I couldn't even unbutton, like I had a long sleeve shirt on, but I had it rolled up and buttoned and I tried to roll it. I couldn't undo the button, dude.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. And I can't imagine trying to flick a lighter.
Yeah.
Right?
Man, and for a while, I mean, months afterwards, my hands and my body, my limbs were still had sensation issues. But the flick of the lighter got to me every time. Like it would just bring me right back to that hole, being that dark place. And I can't tell you how many times I woke up choking on snow. I woke up just in a panic, not being able to get that fire started. And one other thing that happened furthermore is, I was just with a couple of friends and we were having a bonfire and I was getting the fire going and it wasn't working. And they kind of started giving me shit a little bit, kind of like poking fun. Inside, I was having a full-fledged meltdown. I had to excuse myself and walk away because I panicked. I was in full panic mode. I'm like, I can't get this fire started. Why can't I get this fire started? I'm like, God, like, it's real, man. And it brought tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
But it took just a warm, welcoming environment to kind of bring me back. And it takes time. It took a full year to really process the event and talk about it and the night terrors have stopped, but it was they were very consistent for a long time.
Yeah.
And I did talk to somebody afterwards, but it was during COVID. It was spotty, like Zoom calls that would drop all the time. And I was living in a tiny home at the time and it was very isolated. So my coping mechanisms were, just more outdoor activities. And one of the cool things that happened from that event though too is Pierce from Portland Mountain Rescue had called me a week or two afterwards and he wasn't asking how I was doing physically, he was asking how I was doing mentally. Big. Which I think was really, really big. And to have the guy who just saved your life, your hero, call you, I was trying not to fanboy out, but it just meant so much to me. And I mean, and he told me, he's like, I wish he wouldn't have told me, but he said there was 3 times on that mission where I was about to call it. we weren't going to continue because the conditions were so gnarly, and they had to ski. So they had taken a cat up to the top of Palmer and then had skied down. And I mean, it was sheer ice at one point. I mean, it was dark. It was just insane conditions. So yeah.
Yeah, so having that person to almost debrief it with that was in the situation that actually helped you out of it, it had to be very helpful for you.
And continuously checked in on me every couple of weeks and months and things like that. And I do remember, so I took about a month off, and there was still a ton of snow on Bachelor, and I was like, I'm going to split board up Batch and whatnot. And the weather had turned again. It smelled the same. It felt the same. And I had to stop. I put my head into my arms. I kind of just went down in the fetal position for a second. And I kind of had this whole, I don't know, coming to, and just had to really talk to myself saying, you live for this. You love this. I don't want to be afraid of the thing I love the most. That was so important to get through that moment. It's like, what you're doing, what you're doing, where you are. And it was my friend's dog, actually. I had known that he was climbing, and it was actually kind of cool. The first dog I ever had, her name was Daisy. His dog's name was Daisy. But I'm down in here like this, and all of a sudden a nose just slides right into my my face there, and this dog is checking in, seeing if I was all right.
No way, dude.
And it was so cool. Then I hear dog say, I'm like, no freaking way. Like, again, another serendipitous, life is crazy type of moment, But
there's a lot of good. Yeah, there's a lot of good that can come with it. But I like that you touched on like the residual traumatization, essentially, is what it was, that still lingers with you. And a good way to, or something that really helps you, was that number one, that's A+ service by them to check in out with you, not only after the event, but weeks after. Dude, that's huge. That's huge, man. Because there was someone, I was talking to some other person, and he had a traumatic event, and similar thing happened, and he had no check-ins, and it was a completely different situation. To the point, it was a completely different outcome of the situation, I guess, in his mind, mentally.
Yeah.
Like, he felt very much abandoned by the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so Portland Mountain Rescue, they have a whole series in which my story was on. It's on Rescue Radio, but they had a whole thing on mental health in the backcountry, mental health in the things that we love to do, and they touched on something called the Eustace, and where you could be in a climbing accident, and somebody says, "I used to be a climber. I used to do this until this happened, or I broke this, or whatever." And it's so heartbreaking sometimes, like someone who's so passionate about something, and their whole identity is around this one thing, and then they stop doing it, and it changes them, and to be able to overcome and to fight through, and to work through those feelings. That's why I love mountaineering, because you immerse yourself with your thoughts, with the environment. And then when you're by yourself, I mean, it's very loud up there, and to really address those things, and address them in a healthy manner, though, too, is very important. So,
dude, that's gold. I've always said that I have never had louder self-talk than when I'm like rock climbing.
Yeah.
Like, my self-talk has never been loud, and it's not always positive.
Right.
But you have to get over that panic and stuff. But you're right. It's like you are the only person up there. You're super high. Your belayer's way below you. Yeah. And you're just like having these combos in your head. It's so intense, dude. It's so intense. Yeah.
And I think those thoughts are so pure, though, too. And it's something that not everyone, I feel, gets to feel and get to really immerse themselves in, or maybe they're afraid of it. I really think that's a good way of addressing whatever is going on, and to kind of face it head on.
Dude, I love how introspective you are. Maybe that's a Wisconsin thing or something.
Yeah,
I
don't know.
My
mom's kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. Well, dude, I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, man.
Well, you did a great job storytelling. I know that's super hard to recount, but I really do think that, you're going to save a lot of people's lives with this, or at least one. So I love that. And for anybody listening, please give a follow, leave some 5 stars. And on YouTube, please subscribe and hit that like button. How can they find you, by the way?
I'm The End Is Nar on Instagram.
Yes.
And if they want to check out Portland Mountain Rescue on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you find podcasts, Rescue Radio. My episode was the Memorial Day Rescue. It's the first one.
I'll put a link in the show notes. And yeah, so that's because when I listened to it, it was right. They had a rescuer on there talking with you, with the host too. So it was just kind of this 3 people in one conversation. And it was really interesting to hear their point of view with this.
Totally.
Well, Nick's. Yeah.